Hello, Tennessee Voices viewers and listeners. This is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. I'm delighted to have as my guests the co-executive directors of Conexion Americas, Marta Silva and Tara Lentz. We're here to talk about the milestone anniversary, 20 years serving the community in the Nashville area, the Latino community. Tens of thousands of families helped and a lot of work to be done. And I welcome you both. Marta, Tara, how are you doing today?
Very good, David. Thank you so much for this opportunity that you are giving us, and as well as our beautiful, belong Conexion Americas and our Latino families that we serve.
Let me ask you a little bit about for people who may not be as familiar with Conexion, especially a lot of newcomers who have come into Tennessee. Tell us a little bit about what is Conexion and what is the mission?
Conexion Americas is a Latino nonprofit that was founded back in 2002. We are, as you mentioned we are celebrating 20 years this year of serving Latino families in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Our mission is to bring opportunities, open opportunities to Latino families to belong, contribute, and succeed. We are also the proud founders of Casa Safran, which also will be celebrating a huge milestone this year, because at the end of 2020, we will be celebrating 10 years of opening the doors of Casa Safran.
Thank you very much. Anything to add with that, Tara?
I would just add that our organization, ever since we were founded almost 20 years ago now, has really focused on meeting the needs of Latinx immigrant families and all families where they are at any one point in time. And so today, some of our core programs involve college access and success, family engagement programming, case management for new arrival high school students here in Nashville, Gear Up, which is a pipeline approach helping students succeed in middle school and learn about college and career pathways while they're in high school, and then certainly our economic opportunity programs. So we just wrapped up another successful tax season. We also focus on homeownership and micro enterprise development, in addition to advocacy, civic engagement, and cultural opportunities here at Casa Safran.
Thank you so much. And I started writing about the Latino community a few years ago and found that in 1980, it was very small, the population, and in part partially because Hispanic, the term that the census uses, was relatively new. And today, to see the numbers go from 4% to 7% in the state over 10 years, from 10% to nearly 14% in Nashville over 10 years, that's significant. Would you both talk about what have been the opportunities and challenges that growth has come with?
Well, definitely back in the census of 2000, that's when actually was the first realization of the influence of a lot of Latinos moving into Tennessee and particularly into Nashville, which was that initial thought of, wow, we have a growing community that requires not only they are bringing a lot of assets to the city, but at the same time they need a lot of support. So that was the beginnings of this organization. But like you mentioned, of course, over the years, that number have been substantially growing. And with that growth, as there are opportunities, there are also challenges. And that's when Conexion Americas wants to be there, not only to facilitate that integration, that transition for the new arrivals into the city to integrate, but also to open opportunities for them to fulfill within their full potential and bring back and succeed in this city as members of the community. Definitely, we are very focused on the education. We know that there are a lot of challenges on the level of education, the English proficiency, that we need to embrace our families to move on. And then, of course, we believe in the power of the macro enterprise, and that is also another focus of our organization.
Thank you very much for that. Please.
When I think about opportunities and challenges, our Parents as Partners program comes to mind. So that's our family engagement work that we started in 2008, really thanks to a group of Latinx parents here in Nashville who maybe had a child go through the school system, their first child, And then by the time their second child came along, they realized that there was a lot that they had learned along the way that they wanted other parents to be able to learn as well. And so with that program, we've really seen that absolutely over time, the school system, just like any institution in Nashville, has faced some of the challenges that Martha talked about, right? Learning about immigrant students, learning about their needs, figuring out how to best serve students and parents. And the opportunities have been enormous as well. And so we've been able to work with parents to help them become PTO leaders, to help them become more involved in their children's education, to help schools really embrace diversity of the families we work with, and ultimately to help students graduate from college, move into the workforce, and improve all of our businesses here in Nashville.
That's been one thing that's been significant as I've visited Connexion in past years, is you have the influence both on the pre-K students, and then also those who are looking to find a college route or a work route. And I know there've been some disappointments in the last couple of years, such as the tuition equality bill that by one vote did not pass. And when that happened, I mean, how did you feel, and how were you able to turn this into a moment to move forward?
Mm-hmm. I was actually talking with a colleague this morning. That was one moment, right? There have been several moments. Certainly the 2016 presidential election was another moment where many of the students in our program were disheartened, were scared, were very unsure of what their next steps were. And I think that our team's role in a very authentic way at those moments, and really throughout our 20 years, has been to meet students where they're at. And so to sit with them in that pain and say, this is really, really hard, right? Like, we're not going to gloss over, and we're not going to pretend like, let's just move on and keep on going, right? Like, let's name it and own it and be there with it. And, right, once we've done that, think through what your next steps are, right? So it is possible to go to college. It'll be harder without tuition equity. It absolutely is harder. It shouldn't be as hard as it is. But I think that's the beauty of our education team that sits to my left, is that they're willing to do that hard work of showing up at appointments time after time, meeting with students, meeting with their parents, and really just walking through every piece of the process, which, as Martha was talking about earlier, I think that's historically been one of Conexion Americas' greatest strengths, is that we really will just keep walking through all of those details of really any process, including higher education.
Yeah, I would like to add to that obviously those moments validate why we need to be here, why we need to be present, be at the table, continue serving as a bridge of advocacy, of policy, of direct service, because obviously that validates that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And obviously it never have been said that it's an easy route. And I believe that Conexion Americas, among with other partners, nonprofits, advocacy leaders, community leaders, we need to continue making sure that our community arise above all these moments when maybe opportunities have been closed in front of our eyes.
It's one of those things that's been really interesting to talk to students themselves, especially dreamers who have found other opportunities, because there are, I think, many partner organizations around that look to connect people with a university experience or with a job experience. And I can only imagine that with this pandemic the last couple of years, one of the things that I have heard in speaking to people on the ground is that, well, because undocumented families did not qualify for aid from the government, it was even harder. And what did you see during that time in terms of being able to service the needs of the community that you serve?
Well, definitely. When we see the family as a whole, the family needs so many different fronts, and not everybody needs the same formula. And then when obviously we find a need of any of our families that could benefit from a service, that could service from a effort that the city or certain institutions are putting on, and some of those families cannot have access to, that's when obviously like similar to the DACA feeling is equally devastating. Fortunately, during the pandemic, we found so many programs. We personally, through Conexion Americas was able to provide more than $1 million in financial assistance during the pandemic to our Latino families, disregarding their status. That is something that it was important to provide to everybody at the moment, because the crisis didn't select status or didn't select financial status, affect everybody. And when we think about the pandemic, probably more so affect communities of color, communities of low-income families, families that of course don't have the luxury to take a sick day or be removed from work. We are talking about workers that definitely, if they don't show up at work, they don't have any income. So those are the families that Conexion Americas serve. The majority of them are families that are in that situation, and we were very satisfied and proud to be able to provide financial assistance in that moment. Of course, there are many other programs where our families were not able to have access to, but I think that the pandemic opened up opportunities for conversations, for inclusivity in the public sector, and we hope that those conversations will continue.
I agree. You know, as I think back to like spring 2020, I think that was our role a lot of the time, was to be that advocate, saying our families won't qualify, or some of the families we work with, at least many of them, won't qualify for unemployment, won't qualify for this, won't qualify for that. So when there are these limited pockets of money, how can we make sure that families who won't qualify for anything else are getting access to those resources?
Thank you very much. And we've come to the midpoint of the discussion. I always like to ask guests if they would talk a little bit about what they've been doing to cope during this time. A lot of times leaders have so much dedication toward other people, they forget to take care of themselves. So what are you reading, doing, watching, just to help yourself and your own wellness?
So I have two kids. I have a toddler and a baby. And so self-care and wellness sometimes definitely feels like it's on the back burner. But I would say, like lots of folks during the pandemic, our family spent a lot of time in our garden. And I think really found a chance there to see something being created, something growing, being able to take part in that, and certainly eat it or smell flowers right along the way has been and continues to just really be centering, and it sounds cliche, but like grounding and just sort of a steady thing to be able to do.
Thank you, Marta.
Yeah, I think that for me, like for everybody else, I guess the pandemic was a time of reevaluating our priorities, right? What really matters in life. And obviously, I think that it was an opportunity to spend more time with my family, and absolutely way more time outdoors than I ever had in Tennessee. I moved to Tennessee in 2009, and I didn't know a lot of parks and the waterfalls. And then the last 2 summers, I had been absolutely exploring Tennessee more than before. And I'm very thankful for that. Of course, reading is always good. And actually, I got my hands on a new book the beginning of this year, which is called Uncolonized Latinas. And he's an amazing author that I recommend to everybody.
Thank you so much for that. And I can appreciate the outdoors aspect. I got to know waterfalls that I had never visited before this past couple of years, and even saw Paris, Tennessee, which has an Eiffel Tower replica there.
Yes.
But no, thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to talk to each of you a little bit about your own backgrounds. What led you to become nonprofit leaders? Tell us a little bit about your backgrounds.
I can jump in first. So I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina in a small town, 1,200 people. I always say that I learned Spanish in elementary school. I got really lucky that they offer Spanish all the way through my elementary, middle, and high school education at a public school in North Carolina. I learned Spanish before I knew anybody that spoke it as their first language, and so it was an easy decision to keep taking Spanish, major in it. Once I went to college, I got into nonprofit work really because of Conexion Americas, and started doing an internship at Conexion Americas right out of college at Wake Forest, got a job here and stayed. So Conexion Americas has been my job ever since college, and I have really gotten to enjoy all the different aspects of it and see the organization grow and change from 5 people in a small house on Music Row when I got here in 2006 to where we are today. And I certainly have worn a lot of different hats, including this most recent one along the way. But I really have learned so much, right, about nonprofit work, about Nashville, and certainly about the work that we do here at Conexion Americas by being a part of this organization for so long.
And thank you for sharing that. How about you, Marta?
I'm from Bogota, Colombia. So Bogota is a city of 7 million residents. So it's a big city. I moved to United States in 2006. I have been in many other cities since then. I moved to Tennessee back in 2009. And my first instant when I moved to Nashville as an immigrant myself, as a new arrival myself in Nashville, I started looking for my Latino roots in the city. And of course, the first organization that came in mind that some people mentioned to me was Conexion Americas. I was looking, like many other immigrants in the city, I was looking for that sense of belonging, for that sense of being part of something that seems familiar to me, a place when I could absolutely feel myself with the flavors that might come with my culture. And then Conexion Americas provide that to me. So I started as a volunteer in 2009. And in 2010, I was very fortunate to lead the flood relief efforts of Conexion Americas in partnership with United Way, with this historical flood in 2010 in the city. And that opened up other opportunities within the organization. And as Tara mentioned, I had as well so many hats along the way with Conexion Americas in these 12 years now of being with the organization. So yeah, that's what brought me here, but definitely the sense of being an immigrant, being a Latina, and the eager of serving Latinos as well.
I remember back in 2015, I was relatively new to Nashville, and my mother showed me this magazine, The Economist, which had a whole feature on Conexion Americas in Nashville and the growing Latino population. And she said, I want to go see that. And so when they came to visit, we went and actually took the number 12 bus from downtown through Nolensville Road all the way to Connexion to meet with your predecessor, Renata Soto. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to get to see that. If people who are watching this, I will admit, and I've posted this before, it's my favorite place to go early voting is Connexion. So you'll see me there at some point in the next couple of weeks. But
we have Cafecito for everybody.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, speaking of Cafecito, would you talk about your upcoming fundraiser, please?
Absolutely. So every year, Cafecito is Conexion Americas' largest annual fundraiser. It's called Cafecito, a cup of coffee for Conexion Americas. We actually have our own line of coffee that's roasted locally by Bongo Java. So we serve it at the in-person event. This year's event will be hybrid, of course, which we're excited about. We've been virtual the past 2 years, so we'll be able to do a hybrid event. This year, we'll welcome many of our guests on May 6th in person, and we'll also welcome folks from around the country and really around the world is what we've been seeing at our online live streamed event. So our website, connexionamericas.org, has all of the information, but it's really a great way to help us kick off our 20th anniversary celebrations. So that will be the official launch of the upcoming months of celebrations, as well as a chance to learn about Conexion Americas, learn about our history, learn a little bit about Martha and myself, and about where the organization is headed.
Well, that's wonderful. We are come to the conclusion of our conversation. I've enjoyed speaking with you both, Marta Silva and Tara Lentz, co-executive directors of Conexion Americas. Before I let you go, though, I always like to ask guests if they would leave our audience with some words of wisdom to help us get through this continuing time. So let's start with Tara and conclude with Marta.
Mm-hmm. I would say listening is really my advice quite often for many situations, including the moment that we're in. So whether it's listening to your neighbors, listening to your kids, listening to your partner, listening to the people around you, and then moving through the world in a way that is respectful and responsive of what they say.
Thank you. Marta?
Well, for me, in this new leadership of Conexion Americas, of Tara and I as co-executive directors, definitely I believe in that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So definitely this is a time when we need to embrace our communities, our partners, our family, our collaborations, because definitely that will allow us to go even farther than we ever been.
Well, thank you both very much. May you stay well and healthy. And again, I'm so grateful for you to be on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.